Do you want to do the intro? Do you want me to do it?
What's up, guys? We're back.
It's so enthusiastic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we need more of that pep. We don't have enough of that.
we'll make sure to make a skit, and we'll just start screaming shit into the microphones.
Yeah, we need Mick to give us a little intro music. Him on the
Hmm.
trumpet doing some
Yep.
push-ups or something. That would
Hell yeah.
probably what we need. But all right, everybody, welcome to the Strength Club. This is our weekly Q&A podcast that we do. We are two starting strength coaches. We talk about issues or basically kind of frequent questions around the starting strength community, things that we think that could be kind of communicated a little bit better. Cool dude in the chat who says, "Hey bros, how's it going, cool dude?" So, for example, for this episode, we're going to talk about accessory lifts, ancillary lifts, things like that. Previously, we've gone over all the lifts, injuries, programming, when to end your LP, all that jazz. So dig through the channel. There's a wealth of content there. But Chase, how's it going, man? What have you been up to?
Doing well. We've had the meet this past weekend, and then 2 weekends ago, I was at Wichita Falls again for the franchise team kind of meeting for all the gyms, where we got to experience, kind of like what we're all dealing with on the platform, from like what the apprentices are kind of fucking up to what's happening. What's
And the
happening with
apprentices were there, right?
Oh yeah, they were. So what's
Okay.
happening, on the big end of like how do we manage gyms, what's happening in the culture and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Yeah. It's always so hard from an outside perspective to judge other people's lifters because you'll see things that are wrong and then you'll be like, I'm sure they're working on it. But then sometimes you fear in the back of your head that you're like, what if they're not working on it? So
Mhm.
that's probably anxiety producing when you have like apprentices and you're like, hope, please tell me they're fixing that issue,
Oh,
you know?
definitely.
And then
Or
you
even
just,
like if they go to a seminar or if they meet another coach, like please do not fuck it up,
what are
please.
they going to say? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, they're like, I actually have all my lifters do sumo. And you're
Hmm.
like, oh, cool. But yeah, apprentices, that's probably a big handful. And then how was the meet, man? You did not compete. Did you have any of your lifters
I did
competing in
not.
the meet?
I actually had my boss and one of our other apprentices. So I had
Okay.
two, and then I actually had a former client in Houston. He did it with the coach who took my spot down there. His name is Tony. So I kind of helped Tony, who's never really handled anybody in a meet before. So I kind of helped him with attempts and kind of just what to do with someone in the warm up room. So, for example, like the guy was
Slap
just
their ears a bunch, chalk in the
no, it
eyeballs.
wasn't any of that. It was just,
Okay.
hey man, you need to sit the fuck down. Like you don't need to be pacing the floor. This isn't like you're Constantinoff about to go pull 945, right? Just calm the
uh,
fuck down and just
yeah.
listen to some music.
You're about to have an adequately hard day in the gym. That's all
Yeah,
that's going to happen. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You're not breaking world records. We have a few more people in the chat. Yeah, this is Strength Club. We'll get through where to send videos and whatnot afterwards. Feel free to sound off. If you have any questions for us, please just type them in there, and then we'll get to them as the show goes on. But to get to the point of the episode, we're going to be talking about accessory lifts. We get a lot of questions about this, particularly on the Starting Strength app. We have slots for like chin-ups and back extensions in there. About like when to start those, what are those, how should I be doing them, what gear you should be wearing to the gym, favorite duffel bags, things like that. MJDC's in chat. How's it going, MJ? How's the bench going? Just put all of your programming in the chat, man. I'm so
Hmm.
curious about it every time I talk to you. But we'll get to it. All right, so this is our social media. Chase is at Chase Lindley with his backup account at Chase_Lindley. Follow both of them. I think the Chase 2.0 needs to get brought up a little bit, so definitely get on that. I'm at acosstrength.com, and if you're looking to send in videos, send it to support@strength.club. MJDC, what happened, man? Did you get hit by a car?
Yeah, still recovering.
2 cars? He's doing 5-3-1 at the moment. What
Are you?
variation of 5-3-1 are you doing?
Is he recovering from 531? Did he fuck himself up from that, or?
You should be constantly doing 5-3-1. That's why 5-3-1's forever, man. That's the goal. This never change programming. But yeah, so Chase does online coaching. He also coaches at the franchise gym in Oklahoma City. I do online coaching, and I travel around the country doing coaching with my athletes, primarily people who do martial arts. So hopefully someone thinks that's cool. I certainly do. And then that bottom email is for support@strength.club. If you want videos in on the show, we're about to do form checks right after this. Send those videos there or in through the Starting Strength app, and then we'll get to them. Is it as a I don't know how fast do we get to them, Chase? Maybe 2 or
All the
3 weeks
videos?
behind.
Yeah, we are. And I mean, we really don't have that many that just kind of pile up.
Mm-hmm.
It's we just like to talk about other things because we can bust them out pretty
We
quick.
bullshit. We bullshit
Yeah.
a little bit too much. All right, Chase, talk about some more stuff while I pull up some videos.
Yeah, so MJDC in the chat said rotator cuff bullshit. How do you know if it's rotator cuff, man? Did you get it checked out, or what does it feel like? Um, what was the last video that we saw with him? Was it kind of his elbows were flaring out a little bit? You know, Alex?
It was actually the exact opposite of that. He was like tucking his
Checking in.
elbows more than I've ever seen anyone tuck their elbows in any bench.
He said he's
Steven
had it
Roomberg, he said,
before.
no such thing as too much bullshit. You'd be surprised,
Oh
Steve.
yeah,
You'd be
that's
surprised. Steve's workouts sometimes take like 3 hours. I think he's bullshitting too much.
that is a
Steve's one of
lot
the
of bullshit.
boys. Who do we have here? What's this gentleman's name again? We have Akulion. Hopefully that's his whole first name. Or maybe he's like Seal and that's his only name. His name is just
That'd be pretty
Akulion.
cool.
But yeah, we have like 5 or so recent form checks that we're going to rip through, and then we'll get to talking about accessory lifts. So far, this is really great on seeing what back extension looks like. If you want to pay attention to the wrinkles in a shirt, we actually use that as a cue pretty frequently. Try to make wrinkles in the back of your shirt as you're squeezing your chest up into position and keeping your lower back tight. That's what you'll see in the mid back.
Yeah, you can tell that he's almost overemphasizing it to the point where now it's almost his main focus, and he's trying to drop his hips. Akulion, also notice how like you're way on your heels, man. The thing has to be balanced. Make sure you're pushing through the midfoot and get your ass up a little bit higher. This is going to balance everything out, and you'll have a pretty good pull.
Yeah, I think at the finish here, I'll try to pause it on the frame. We'll see how this goes. Yeah, so on the finish, you're not really, you're on the heels to finish and you're kind of keeping your butt behind the bar. Think about using your crotch to push the bar forward a little bit more. Try to get the weight right over the middle of your foot. The top position should feel like you could hold 800 pounds there. You should feel confident and very stable in that position. Right here, you're behind the bar almost entirely. You can't hold a ton of weight like this. Try to get your finishing position to be a little bit more firm. I would look at another video that we have on starting strength called lowering the deadlift with Phil Meggers. It's a gem. Watch it. Hopefully that'll help you because you're still ramping it off your legs a little bit. But otherwise, these are pretty solid on the way up. Need some work on the way down. Chase, how often do you see people like him who are like throttling the descent? They really slow that whole thing down.
A lot of people actually, because I
Yeah.
think they're so worried about what they have to do on the next rep with getting it back up that they're just kind of like in this weird mental lag.
Mm-hmm.
It should be no mental effort really at all. It's just
Yeah.
punch it straight down.
Yeah, you're just controlling the fall. Tejo Affleck said, "Hey, everybody, I'm going
What's
to
up,
leave this
Teo?
up for the rest of the show, Tejo, just for you, buddy." But yeah, MJDC, he did 225 by 4 bench last Friday. It sounds like a programming thing, my man. If you're running into the same issue persistently and it's just kind of popping up whenever you get to a certain level of intensity, it's probably that. Here's our boy. This is Nate Hannafy, I believe. Maybe, I forget his whole username, but it's Nate.
What is this? Is this like 225 on it?
This is 225, but those are weird plates.
Yeah, they are. Almost look like 315 for a minute.
It's 455 pounds.
Well, either way, man, he is doing a shitty job trying to balancing it. Again, you can kind of see in the toes here, they're just moving all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he's overdone like the cue of sitting back into the hips, right? You still need to let your knees go forward and allow the quads to help you extend out of the bottom of the squat, right? But you're going to lean over more and you're going to get yourself into the midfoot and everything will be fine.
Yeah, you need to get your knees out over your toes pretty quickly. If you look up TUB OW on starting strength, Tubo, terribly useful block of wood. It has a lot of cues basically about how to get your knees into the correct position in the squat and then keep them there. I think that would probably be pretty beneficial for you if you're just trying to coach yourself. And like Chase was saying, if you kind of like look at the foot, if you're coaching anybody else or if you're looking at your own videos, the foot, I can't remember who was talking about it, but they kind of called it like the diagnostic foot. You can very much so see like where someone's weight is distributed. If they're pitter-pattering their foot in between reps, if they're on their toes, if they're on their heels, and then you could kind of troubleshoot from there. So like in this situation, you're on your heels, so do all the things that Chase said. That's the next video. We'll get back to this guy. But in these situations, the toes are actively coming off of the ground. So we need to fix that as like priority number one, Anything to add here, Chase?
No, you're actually doing a damn good job that you're not falling on your ass with 225. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah,
just like all heels in it.
I think the bar position may be a little bit too low as well. We're just going to leave Tejo's messages up here constantly. Good thing I didn't leave that cocaine orgy profile photo on here. Yeah, so on rep 1, if we look at how slow and kind of creaky this descent looks, whenever this happens, this generally tells me that the person is really way on their heels. I don't really see this slow of a descent speed when people are on their toes frequently. And I believe the bar is too low here as well. So I think the bar position probably needs to move up. And that's really the last note for you, my man. All right, so we'll move on. We got a deadlift here. We have some guy doing the seated overhead press. This is LA Fitness, almost confirmed. God. Almost confirmed to be LA Fitness. Chase, can you hear the music in the background for this?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah. There's some.
What does it sound like?
Classic music going on. It sounds like Panera Bread jazz for some reason. It doesn't.
Nice.
It's not very much so not Globo Gym music. All right, so we got some 55s on the bar. So, all right, cool. This is a decently heavy deadlift for some on this side.
This is like, what? Is that in kilos?
Yeah, this is 325.
Okay.
No, 315, I think.
It looks about 140, so it's about 310.
Okay.
All right. I'd probably move out your stance just a little bit more. You're kind of a thicker dude, right? So we want your heels right underneath your hips. And since, again, you're a big dude, you're going to have to widen out your stance a little bit, and you're going to get yourself into a better position at the start. With the heels out and then your toes out as well, knees are going to shove out to the sides, and your stomach and your torso is going to fit right in between that gap that you've created, allowing you to actually set your back a little bit better. Yeah, and then, if you're kind of messing around with your grip so much, try to see if you can get some chalk on the bar, or just use straps, man, because their bars are just.
Oh, he's going for one more. I thought that was the end. He's doing it. All right, let's see how this one goes. Rep 5, time to shine. All right, so just for reference, at this point, if this happens, I would consider it a broken set, Yeah. And then we can talk about why that rep failed and why your heel came off the ground. But we'll go back to this. So yeah, like Chase was saying, we'll pop right in the middle of the video or something. Like Chase was saying, widen the stance out. I would recommend having somewhat of a severe toe angle, so not having your toes pointing straight forward. We need to make space for your belly to get down in between your thighs, like he was saying. And then once you pick a grip, stick with it no matter what. You have pretty small hands, like visually, your middle finger is barely wrapping around the bar. So it may be time to invest in straps for someone like you, or you can just use a thinner diameter bar. The same size bar isn't appropriate for everyone, right? So if you have very tiny hands, use a thinner bar. That's totally fine. They may not even have one at your gym, which is probably the issue here. But try a thinner barbell. And then I think we're going to be coming up on this. We'll come up on this last rep. Chase, what's your thoughts on why this rep ended up failing?
So one right there, he dropped his ass, so it's way forward.
It's left forward, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Watch the heel. Yeah, heel popped off the ground, everybody, if you're not paying attention.
So yeah, he didn't really use his lats to keep the bar on his legs, and he basically just extended hard with his knees, and he didn't really pick the thing up. He's trying to pick it up with his back, so to speak. You have to rock yourself back, make sure that the bar always stays on your legs, and you're going to have to think about leg pressing the floor away in this scenario. And I think a lot of it, too, has to do with the grip. Because as soon as you start fidgeting around, the limiting factor on a deadlift is usually the grip, and you have just taxed it in so many ways here.
Yeah, it may be hard to see this for people who are watching this at home, but his right hand, the one that he has supinated, it opens the hell up. It really, really opens up as he's starting his rep. We have some comments from our boy Tejo. What does he say? I've been doing chins every workout and finished with 3 sets of 20 to 22 push-ups most times. It's helped quite a bit on not stalling with the bench press like before. Interesting. Tejo, the bodybuilding god. I had to restart NLP because of a couple of surgeries. Any other accessories you suggest for those lifts? Yeah, we'll talk about that later on in the show, man. Did you have to get a series of surgeries back to back recently? Is that what's going on? Yeah, or do you just mean historically, or within the past few months have you just had multiple surgeries?
So who's this guy squatting, Alex?
Okay.
Oh, nice. We have a.
Yeah, I know, Sam. This is Man O' War 1632851407417. he was very specific about having that string of numbers as his
Yeah,
nickname.
is that his coordinates or something?
Yeah, that's his. Yeah, he's giving us latitude and longitude. But okay, yeah, Man O' War. These look like some high-tech spacey shoes. I don't think these are lifting shoes. I'm not entirely sure though.
Are those Metcons?
I think they could be some fancy cross-fitty Metcon.
Yeah, right off the bat, man, he's high. He's about 3 inches where he does not need to be.
Mm-hmm.
He actually does a pretty good job of kicking out his knees. You just have to reach lower. So don't actually give yourself a stopping point. You're gonna come up, but you just have to keep coming down.
Yeah, I'll put myself on the big one for this. So I see this problem a lot. I use my arm to demonstrate it because it's kind of hard to do it with your leg when you're sitting and talking to someone. But you need to let your knees close. A lot of people will be like, I don't know what I mean. I can't get my knees to close. My knees don't open. But essentially, if we consider my elbow to be my knee and then my hand to be my foot, all we're looking for, I guess it would be pointed this way. All we're looking for is for the calf and the hamstring to touch, right? So this is the back of my calf. This is the back of my hamstring. If this is my leg being straight, we're trying to get them to squeeze together, right? So if you're standing up and you grab your leg, you kind of do that quad stretch like a runner does. That is as closed as your knee can get. Basically, you've taken your calf and you're pulling it into your leg, right? Almost everybody can do that. It may be a little bit tight, but your knee is going to get really quite close. The angle between like your femur and your tibia, it's maybe 10 to 15 degrees at that point, depending on how much muscle you have. But essentially what we're looking for is for that joint to be very open to as closed as it possibly can be, right? You are the person who is controlling that, right? So in this situation, like for Man O' War here, the cues that we have are basically just keep squatting, keep going deeper, right? So he is the only thing that's preventing himself from getting lower right now. He's leaning over, he's shoving his knees out, the grip is totally fine, the head there, the eye gaze is totally fine, stance is totally fine, but he's going down and he's like regulating his own squat depth by whenever his quads feel tight. Maybe it's just a function of the bar being a little bit too heavy for him right now. But essentially what's happening is that you're turning the squat around early. So you just need to keep doing it for longer. That's really it. And then to do that, I always tell people, like, let your knee get as closed as it can. If you're coaching someone through this, you can just put something on like the back of their calf, and then they'll have that tactile cue to kind of squeeze down on it. You can use your finger or anything like that. Chase, any parting shots for Man O' War here?
No, you kind of hit the nail on the head with he probably does need to drop down about 20 pounds and just keep going down lower.
Yeah, because these didn't look so slow that I think they were like heavy and crushing him. You know what I mean? Yeah. We'll pause these at a depth and we have some comments to get through too. And bam. All right. Steve said, would you recommend hook grip for people with small hands, or generally stay away from hook grip because of the pain and invest in straps? If you're doing any sort of Olympic lifting, you need to know how to hook grip and how to hook grip well. Chase is going through these perils right now. If you have the finger length for it, hook grip is really nice. If you have small hands like that gentleman before, that hook grip is probably almost literally impossible with a normal diameter bar. For him, something like a strap or a Versa grip is probably the move if he can't get his hands on a thinner bar. Chase, any thoughts?
It's true. I think Paul Horn has a video about how to kind of set a better hook grip, where you kind of really kind of I guess is more pronate your hand on the bar and kind of really dive your thumb down towards your feet to kind of attack it better. But for the
I think
most
it's
part,
literally called hook grip for small hands, if I remember
something
correctly.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It may help for him. Again, he just kind of has a short end of the straw here, and he just has to find a better way to where he can just hang on to the bar and get the deadlift going.
Yeah. And then here we go. Tejo, he had an appendectomy 9 months ago and then a varicocelectomy 3 months ago. So it's nothing to do with lifting, but obviously lost most progress. I had both times. Yeah, appendectomy. Surgeons are amazing at that. That probably has like zero recovery cost for you at this point. Varicocelectomy kind of depends on where they did the incision at. So if they ended up doing it in the actual sensitive area, like that recovery time is pretty low. If they ended up going through like the inguinal canal, that can be a little bit different. Yeah, you can message me about the varicocelectomy if you have any questions about that. I've had to deal with that a few times, not with myself, but with some of my lifters. Yeah, Tejo, neither of those surgeries are like, oh, I had my spine removed and my
Yeah,
legs
it's not
turned
really.
in.
I wouldn't say they're very invasive.
Yeah, it's not like It's not like you had your legs replaced or something like that.
Yeah.
You have new robot legs that you're trying to squat with. But yeah, progress-wise, Tejo. So what he was saying about this, a lot of chins after every workout, sets of push-ups after every workout. It's just more volume, man. And if I remember correctly, Tejo, you're like a pretty young, robust gentleman, so you should probably be fine handling that extra work. So we'll get on to this last form check. This is the most lewd of them all, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
These are like some low shorts with a shirtless man.
They are. He's just teasing us.
I know. All right, Chase, how are you feeling about these, man?
Again, they're super high.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of looks like like, hey, my son's working out. I'm gonna show him up. So dad's just ripped off his shirt and he's ready to squat his
This
son's
could
bar.
be the sun too. I don't know. The username
I
is
don't know,
Sam
man.
the Man, so that's an interesting one.
So one thing we got to get his stance corrected. So point your toes in just a little bit. Make sure you're at the proper width. Balance and depth is the two big things here.
I think bar position first, man. Does that
Is
look
that
low as hell to you, or does that just me?
um maybe a little bit? I don't know. I think he could live with it. It's not that big of a one, but
Okay.
I think one thing: never fucking squat without a shirt on your back. That is just it's a dumbass move, man. Like you're not in
Yeah.
college anymore. You're not in high school. Just put on a shirt. You're fine.
Hmm. Yeah, even squatting in like a tank top sometimes, if the
Yeah.
straps are thin enough, can be a giant pain in the butt. Personally, I think 90% of the bad things in the squat are coming from the grip, because it's like your hand position is having to get to basically about here, and you are struggling to keep this thing on your back. When you re-rack it, you'll kind of notice you like frantically running it back into the rack. That's an indicator to me that you can't hold on to the thing comfortably. If the rack position is very secure, you can stand there all day. Like the standing up part, that's the easiest part of the squat when
Mhm.
you're just at lockout. So I'd fix that grip. I think you need to move the bar up, get your wrist set into a better position, and then you'll be able to stay a little bit more vertical. So the lower the bar is down on your back, the more horizontal that you'll have to be, because you're making your torso effectively shorter when you're looking at this or analyzing the squat from the side. To keep the bar over the midfoot, you have to lean over more the lower the bar is on your torso. So if you can move that bar up an inch and a half into like a correct low bar position, you'll probably have a lot of an easier time. But yeah, like Chase was saying, I think we need to get some weight off the bar and then really figure out where depth is. A lot of the cues are kind of similar to Man O' War over here, frankly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any parting shots for Sam the Man?
Sam, get a shirt, man. Even though this
He
is your
doesn't
own
own
gym,
any shirts.
he probably doesn't. But wear a
Yeah.
shirt, right? I mean, even the smallest amount of sweat's going to throw off the bar positioning. So let's
Hmm.
say like you may have had it in the right place, but then as you're kind of getting into this more and more sets, um, things change, right? Because your back is sweaty, the bar may have slipped, right? Who
Yeah.
knows? And there's better grasp, there's better friction with better bar placement on your back if you have a shirt.
I also don't think that Sam was wearing any underwear. It looked like Sam was just going commando there, which is
How
respect.
did you see that?
It's just that's what the coaching eye lecture is,
Oh,
actually.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, if you have the coaching eye, you can tell. Just so when he's squatting at the bottom, I have seen no visible traces of underwear whatsoever. So our man Sam, maybe he was just completely naked, and then he decided to put
Fuck it.
shorts on for the video. That's
Yeah,
probably what happened. Yeah.
probably was. He
Yeah, the
was in a
shorts are
rush.
really.
Yeah, he was in a rush to take off his shorts.
Yeah, that's probably what it was. All right, so to the meat of the episode, we're going to be over accessory lifts. Why are we doing them? Chin ups, back extensions, lying triceps extensions, and then a little bit more definitions about assistance versus accessory episode or movements. Um, there's a really good article on this, written by someone who's very familiar with showing strength. His name is Mark Ripito, if you haven't heard of him. He has a lovely article called Lifts versus Assistance Exercises. Training is not about today. Go and read it. It's a really good one. It was one of the first articles I believe I ever read from starting strength content, and it greatly endeared me to it. And then the bottom blurb, I found from one of the weekly starting strength reports, and it just made me crack up. It just said it's just the quote: "You're thinking too hard about this." And then some guy, instead of just understanding that it was his cue to leave, he makes it endearing. He's like, it's a curse." But yes, so let's start to overthink things. We'll get right into it. The chin up. Chase, do you recognize this strapping gentleman on the right?
I don't know who he is.
I don't know. He looks like he can only press maybe 400 pounds.
That's some weak stuff.
It's not even 405.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about the chin up. What's a chin up?
So a chin up is a good way of handling kind of a lighter day on your stress for the pulls. What we see here in the gym here in OKC is that a lot of our kids, a lot of our older trainees, they go through and they have about 2 weeks of pulling really hard, really effective, and then their deadlifts kind of hit a wall to where we can't just every session bang out the deadlift. So we have to start adding in a little bit more exercise selection into it, and the chins help satisfy that. Chins are very they're not loaded, right? You can do some weighted chins, but no one's there yet. The chins are a great way to help increase your pulling frequency during the week, so that way you still have 3 days of pulling, but you're not getting beat up with, let's say, you're doing a rack pull and 2 deadlifts, or just 3 deadlift sessions.
Okay, so yes, to be pedantic about it, a chin up is when you, the lifter, grab a bar that is over your head, and then starting from full extension, where your arms are completely straight, you pull yourself up to the bar. A qualification for a rep is whenever we're saying at least your chin is over the bar. That's why it's called a chin up, but more comfortably when your collarbones are over the bar is the measurement that I like to use. And the way that we define a chin up is whenever your hands are supinated, like a curl, so your hands are facing upwards or your palms are facing upwards, whereas a pull up is when your palms are facing down. They're done a little bit differently. They're not precisely the same. We like chin ups because it uses a little bit more bicep. That way, you can kind of get more bang for your buck. The pull ups are a little bit more fatiguing elsewhere. For chin ups, if you're like a light young person, I like to do chest to bar every time. Unless you have like giant biceps, you should be able to get to the point where your arm can close enough so that you're literally your collarbones or your sternum is touching the bar. We kind of do the same thing with a lat pull down, which we'll talk about later. The rep qualifications for a lat pull down is the bar physically touching your chest. That's kind of what our proxy is. We use that like depth is in the squat. So Chase talked about when to introduce these. So Chase, you would say you typically introduce this whenever the deadlift gets too stressful to do it 3 times a week?
I usually do. Yes, either
Okay.
that, power cleans. But this is a good one. If I have like a wombat of a person, it's super easy to learn, right? It's like you said, literally just put your hands here and you just pull.
Mm-hmm. It is intuitive. There's one thing that I want to touch on about pulling under or around the bar. So like Chase said, like most people will figure this out really intuitively. There are some more nuances to it though. Chase, do you ever program pull-ups or is it always chin-ups?
Always chin ups.
Always chins.
Hmm.
And then whenever you are doing it, you program them what, maybe once, 1 to 3 times a week generally?
Yeah, I know we've touched on this a few times where if we have a younger person or someone who's able to really handle these, just do it after your sessions.
Yeah.
Then once that kind of gets to a point where you're doing a bunch, then we add some weight to it. So doing a weighted chin up. But for the most part, starting out, the vast majority of people, it's hard for them to do one.
Hmm.
So we kind of edit or kind of change up the chin up where we have a band that kind of loops across there on the pins, the safety pins, and we just do a bunch of volume with it and then slowly decrease the resistance. And let's say now someone's able to do one chin up and we just do a bunch of singles and then hopefully doubles and just gradually increase the stress with volume.
Yep. Yeah. Unless you have like a very good assisted chin up machine, it is quite hard to gradually load a chin up.
Mhm.
Um, it's just conceptually difficult. The lat pull down is really helpful. We'll talk about that next. One thing, this is a big pet peeve for me. I see a lot of people who think they can't do any good amount of chin ups, or they only feel it in their arms. They never feel it in their back. Generally, they'll be pulling kind of around the bar rather than under it. So I'm gonna put me here, and then wait, I need to go this way. Oh, cameras are so difficult. Everything's backwards. So if we just pretend that there's like a chin up bar above me, what I'll notice is that a lot of people end up pulling themselves kind of away or around the bar. Like whenever they're trying to pull, they'll get stuck maybe about 90 degrees and their head will be physically backwards from the bar. A lot of times, if you're strong enough, that's totally okay. You can just curl yourself up into the movement. For a lot of people, that is not feasible whatsoever. Essentially, if you can't get one chin up, a lot of the times people end up going from here and then they just pull it kind of in front of them. They'll just do this with their lats and then they'll stop moving essentially. So, what I like to tell everybody is think about it as the exact opposite of the overhead press. You're trying to stay directly under the bar. So, I'm trying to think about lining my collarbones up directly under that bar that's above me, and then I want to pull down with my back so that my elbow is closed. So I end up about right here rather than pulling it out in front of me because I see a ton of people really struggling with a chin up and they end up in a position right about there. That's my big pet peeve. I see that technical error a lot, and then people think that it's impossible to have technical errors on the chin up. You can basically turn it into a curl or into a back movement with some bicep work, and we want it to be the second one. Okay, chin up programming. Chase, do you guys have lat pull downs at the franchise gyms?
We do. We have it's so simple, man. It's just like two little pulleys and a rope, and basically a blocker or a stopper to block the weights from falling off on one end, and then we have a handlebar.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they're
it's
so
super
simple.
easy build.
Yeah, if you have an ounce of DIY in your spine whatsoever, you can make a lat pull down at home.
Mm-hmm.
This is the picture we have here. It's just like the gym version, like a whole cable or a whole plate stack. But yeah, the pulley version, like inside of here, basically, right under this chain, there's a pulley, and there's another pulley directly over that plate stack. How often are you using the lat pull down, Chase?
Pretty frequently. Again, with older trainees, the deadlift becomes really stressful to where we need some sort of pulling in the week that won't beat them up, and a lat pull down satisfies that criteria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like the negative, it has a lot of, and let's define a chin up negative while we're being pedantic here. A chin up negative, it's the same exact thing as a chin up, except you are removing the portion of the ascent and you are intentionally slowing down the descent. So what you're doing is you're taking your grip on the chin up bar and then you are jumping up to the top so that you meet the conditions for the top, so your chin or your chest to the bar, and then you are slowly lowering yourself over a count of like 2 or 3 seconds. That has a lot of dynamism to it. It is like a ballistic movement because you are jumping and then you are catching your weight, right? So like for some people, it's totally fine, But if you have someone who comes in who's 50 years old, or someone who's a little bit heavier, or if like Aunt Meredith comes in, you're not going to have her do a really fast negative.
I don't want her jumping at all. Just want her just
Exactly.
to stay planted on the earth.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just like if you're gonna tell like a 55-year-old guy to be like, all right, I need you to jump up, catch yourself, and then slowly lower yourself, and then they're like, I can't do barely can do one chin up, if any,
Mm.
a chin up negative. Save those for people who are really robust. One thing that I like to do is program like straight sets across, and I know that you won't be able to finish all of them. So let's say that you can do like 8 chin ups in a row. I'll say, all right, you're going to do 3 sets of 11 or 3 sets of 12. You'll do as many as you can till failure, and you'll fill in the remaining portion with negatives. So if you did like 8 on the first set, you'd have 3 negatives to go. You did 6 on the second set, you'd have 5 negatives to go, and so on and so forth.
Damn, dude, you're mean.
Oh
Fuck,
yeah,
man.
I kill people with chin up volume. It's that's all
And
I do.
plus the negative aspect, man. For someone who's comes in here not used to training with chin ups or even a lat pull down, negatives will tire you the fuck out. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's brutal.
They are so much harder than a normal chin up.
They are.
Frankly, even if you can do a bunch of chin ups, a negative is harder because like the eccentric component is something that's normally pretty neglected, and people,
Mm-hmm.
like people will fall into the bottom of their chin up. And eccentric is just really hard. MJDC said that's my problem with chins. Yeah, I'll see that for heavier guys. Like they'll just shoot their arms basically backing out. They'll just try to turn it into a curl. So hopefully that advice was helpful for you. I'm going to leave this series of comments up. I'll print this out and put it on my wall. I would like to know about Alex's forearm programming. They're huge. Yeah, not many things you can say that about me, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm only 4'2". I'm 4 feet and 2 inches tall. Tejo Affleck said he did negatives once and they were awful. I was sore for like a week. Yeah,
Yep.
man. One thing that you'll notice is your abs get really sore from negatives too, because like the amount of time that they're holding your spine in place as you're wiggling around is dramatically increased. And then we'll go back to the important comment here. So chin-ups for weighted versus higher reps. Like if you're progressing someone on the lat pull down, like how many sets are you doing? How many reps are you doing? Are you aiming to increase weight or frequency, or what are you doing?
I'm aiming to add weight. Not so much frequency because again, I don't really want them so much on this because of the criteria that we're trying to solve. Right, I want a lift that allows us to move the most muscle weight or the involves the most muscle mass. We're allowed to lift the most weight possible over the greatest effective range of motion. The lat pull down kind of satisfies that to some extent, but the more that I can get someone to deadlift or to rack pull, I rather them to do that.
Okay.
So
And in terms
generally,
of weight versus how many reps do you have someone doing to start, for example?
maybe at the start anywhere from 5 to 8.
5 to 8. Okay. And then so let's say that they nail their weight. Let's say they have 30 pounds in lat pull down. They hit
Hmm.
eights across. The next week, do you go to 9 reps or do you go to like 35 or 40?
No, we're gonna go to 35. Just gradually add some more weight.
Yep. Yeah. So Chase hit the nail on the head there. Basically, it's just like once you can satisfy the conditions of like maintaining your reps and increasing weight, that's great. Because like if
Mhm.
Chase, for example, if he went to 35 pounds and they'd hit it for sevens, and then 40 pounds and they hit it for sixes, we're not very confident about how much stronger they're getting. So like if they can
Yeah.
maintain those eights across while he adds weight, that's great. Um, and now, in terms of interference with other lifts, how much do you notice that with the chin up? Like, are people saying like, "Oh, I'm so sore from chin ups, I can't do my squats" or something like that?
Hardly no, because I don't want them to get to that point.
Yeah.
Maybe if their hands are kind of beat up,
Hmm.
these will develop monster calluses. So if a person's not used to that or just used to treating their hands, this will definitely just cause some discomfort there.
Repaired front carries. Cool, dude. Do you mean like a strongman carry? Like I'm carrying an object out in front of me, like a Husafell stone or a sandbag or something like that?
Yeah, I don't,
I'm trying to think
well,
if he means like front raises as like a delt accessory, or if he means like carries as
oh
opposed to
man,
side carries. Because it's like a
said
side
yep.
carry would be like yeah. I mean, it depends. If you want to do strongman stuff, they're super helpful. For all of my guys who pick people up for their sports, I will typically have these do these if they have extra recovery resources to spare. Yeah, strongman carries. Yeah, so he said that there. Um, I had two guys who got like really adept at strongman stuff over the pandemic because all they had was heavy sandbags. So they were
Oh
doing like
nice.
they basically were doing like gable grip heavy sandbag squats for like sets of 20 with like a 200-pound sandbag. Yeah, it's a big need thing. Like if you need to do it or want to do it, they're great. But they have a very high fatigue cost. That's all, like super high fatigue cost. If you're not fairly robust already and not well conditioned, if you add them in, you'll kind of you will tank the rest of your lifts unless you do it carefully. Chase,
I don't want any of my clients here doing that because again,
just
you
bring
gotta
a big old Atlas stone in the gym one
yeah,
day.
no. Like it's just the demographic that you're working with, right? Like
Yeah.
my guys, they just want to get stronger, right? So I want to do assistant exercises that best satisfies that. If they had some conditioning aspects that maybe or they were going into strongman, definitely need to do that, right? They need to practice their sport.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, we'll touch on this more about like the accessory versus ancillary or
Hmm.
assistance exercise. But the criteria that Chase has been hinting at, the four criteria that we use, those are like incredibly valuable when it comes to picking and triaging your accessory movements. Chase, can you run us through those criteria again?
Yeah. So the ones that I mentioned were one, the most muscle mass used. So let's for the example of like a chin up versus a pull up, Alex said we were able to use the bicep, right? So that actually satisfies that criteria. And also the pull up has a little bit more scapular retraction, really doesn't aid us in anything. Um, the other one is the most weight possible, right? So let's say if I was to do a squat of 405 for one versus a squat of 135 for 10, I get a greater training effect. I get stronger with the 405-pound barbell. Um, over the greatest effective range of motion, that's the third. So, like a squat ass to grass, I have to relax something. So then that kind of crosses out the criteria of using the most muscle mass because now my hamstrings have basically contracted to their full extent. They are
Which is why
not
we say
helping with
effective,
anything.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's the
It's
effective part.
very, very important about the word effective. I
Hmm.
mean, essentially, I'm relaxing to get in that position. So now I have to, retighten and get everything back into the proper range of motion to actually use them.
Yeah.
And then the fourth is to get stronger, right?
Hmm. And so, like with chin ups versus pull ups, for example, one thing that you'll notice for people with pull ups is the range of motion is typically very short because they will make
Mhm.
the grip width very wide. Like the longest range of motion you can get is like a chin up where you're pulling it to like your low sternum basically, and you're starting with your hands right above your shoulders. That's going to be the longest range of motion you can get out of this. It's a huge training stimulus. So rest assured that all of the assistance exercises that we have picked here or going to be talking about kind of fall into this criteria. And then one thing I don't think we very clearly defined of it isn't when to introduce the chin up. If you're young and robust and you can do them immediately. They're not super hard in recovery cost. If you need something as a kind of a stopgap, whenever your deadlifts start getting a little bit too costly, start doing chin ups or lat pull downs or negatives or something like that. They're not a replacement for the deadlift by any means, but they are helpful to get your back stronger, your arms stronger, so that things feel a little bit lighter. Now, the back extension. Just to define these images here, the back extension is the rightmost one. This is the most common that you'll see in gyms. It's like a 45-degree back extension. Your crotch goes into this pad. You can hold those handles to get set up. Your ankles are braced onto this little roller right there. And then you just lean over, basically. You lean over, and then you come back up. And then we have the more modern version of it, which is the glute ham developer, which is the GHD. This is common now in more box or globo gyms, and it's like the GH or it's like the 45-degree back extension, but to the extreme. Your ankles get anchored in between these pads at the back end of the machine. Your crotch goes right on this pad, and then you can have a much longer range of motion here. And then the reverse hyper, it kind of functions in a similar way. I've been seeing these pop up in a lot of gyms too, but you're basically just doing what that gentleman is doing there. Your ankles get braced into this pad at the bottom. You hold on to these handles and you pretend you're flying. Basically, what you do is that you pull your heels up to the ceiling, and it uses everything on the back of your body, right? So your hamstrings, your glutes, your spinal erectors, all that jazz. The back extension is programmed into the starting strength LP, kind of as another stopgap for the deadlift. Chase, how are you using those, if you use them at all?
Don't use any of these. I think Rip has said this where it's a good way to kind of fuck up your back at
Mm-hmm.
times because again, so you've squatted, right? So your low back is fatigued there. You've deadlifted, you're fatigued. It's going to carry over into the next sessions that you do, and then this is now isolating kind of the specific area of the fatigue in your low back, and you don't want to murder yourself. Like you can kind of get pretty carried away with a glute ham developer. I mean, I've done it in junior high where you just go one after another and you're toast the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm curious to see if they do make a fourth revision of starting strength, if this is still going to be in there. I still program these a lot for people because I think it's just kind of another way to work the lower back that's not like physically crushing you under a bunch of weight. Like if you're squatting 500 pounds, it's nice to be able to do something that's not incredibly heavy. Some of these movements can satisfy that criteria. It is a lot of rounding and it's a lot of, I don't want to say constant rounding because it's an extension cycle as well, but it's a lot of movement around the lower back, and that can be irritating for some people. The one thing that I think that is very important that people don't touch on generally is that it's kind of the same thing as the deadlift. We don't want the deadlift to be like your pelvis is anchored in space and then you are just basically unflexing or extending your spine to get it done, right? It's not just movement around the spine. So like if you're doing a back extension correctly, you're setting your lower back and then you're letting your pelvis rotate to lower yourself, right? So you're stimulating like your hamstrings and your glutes, and you're keeping your lower back in isometric control. A lot of people, when they do all of these movements, what they're doing is just rounding and unrounding their lower back at speed. And if
Like
you're not
yeah,
used to that,
just
exactly,
bending.
because it's so easy to do like a set of like 30 of them, and if you're not used to that movement, it's gonna fuck you up.
Mhm.
So treat them the same similarly to like a deadlift. It's just like I'm trying to get good back extension out of it and then letting my pelvis rotate. I'm not just rounding and extending my spine as fast as I can. So in terms of a rep, it's harder to define these ones. Like a chin up, we can just say, yeah, you get your head above the bar. But for these, it's basically just like go from kind of flexion to extension, kind of go from rounded to straight. It really depends on the machine. It's harder. As to when to introduce, we have Chase's vote. Chase said he doesn't really introduce these at all, right?
Nope. If
Okay.
anything, I probably would introduce a good morning versus any of these.
That's a hot take. I like that one.
Mhm.
How often, or let's say when, would you theoretically introduce a good morning?
It just be highly specific with someone
Okay.
who's I've known for a while, and we have a great training history together. And now it's just something to develop a little bit more with their back, right? Let's say like they're pulling frequencies through the roof. Like let's say they're Olympic lifter, but they still need to kind of strengthen something, and we don't want them to do a deadlift so close to a meet. Let's try a good morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're also great if your shoulders or hands or anything are fucked up. You can
Hmm.
get a safety bar and do some good mornings and basically just take your arms completely out of it. So I've had some times when I've had like a wrist injury or some sort of elbow tendinopathy that I'm dealing with. If I want to get some back work in, that's a great way to do it. Just someone cranking down on your neck, basically. In terms of frequency for these, yeah. We have another question here actually. Chase, how do you say this name?
Hamain
Haim?
Chapev.
Haim?
Dude, I don't know. I'm butchering it. Hamaim? Haim? We'll
Mimi
say.
Trepev.
Yeah.
Most important question in all the world: what do you do if you miss a rep? Do one more set to make up, or repeat the weight next time? I'm assuming. Let's say for context, he's saying this is within the LP.
Hmm. Um, let's say, yeah, it's the last rep of your 3x5. It's the last set. Usually, I'm gonna go up the next time. It could be just maybe you didn't rest enough. And how is your eating and sleeping? There's some variables that you have to take into account. If you can say yes on all those things, um, you can probably say yes. You can go up, but after the next session, if it happens again, you need a program change.
Yeah, figure out if it's a fluke. Like it could be
Yeah.
like technically you just screw up a rep. Like if you just didn't eat that day at all and you decided to go into the gym, like you had a big fight with your parents or something like that, something crazy. Your dog ran away. There's a lot of things that can go into a fluke. Make sure it's not a fluke. I wouldn't just do another whole set because like if you already failed to do 5 complete reps on one attempt, it's not going to happen magically again. You're not going to, and even unless you rest 30 minutes, maybe you're not going to get the gas to do another five.
Mhm.
I would say it indicates a programming change if it happens frequently, or if everything's just getting super slow. Pete, he said, how about stiff-legged deadlifts or RDLs? We'll talk about those a little bit later, Pete, but rest assured they're in here. And then Chase also said, by the way, nice to see you, Chase, at the WFAC for the conference. You are incredibly handsome.
Pete, yeah, it was good seeing you too. So Pete's actually opening up it's Columbus. So he is opening up the franchise in Columbus.
Oh, hot damn. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Nice. Man, we got to get Pete. Has Pete ever sent in some videos? I feel like he's been popping in
I think
around
he
here.
has because whenever he talked to me, he's like, "Yeah, you and Alex, I follow y'all's podcast all the time." I was like, "Really?" Like, I didn't think like
Uh,
only like 5 people watch this shit or something. But
Yeah, actually all four of our viewers are my mother. Is what it
yeah,
is. She just gets a bunch of laptops going at the same time and
yep.
watches us. Um, but yeah, so the one thing I would say to make sure about back extensions is you're really not loading them. You would need to make sure if there's any sort of interference effect with the rest of your lifts. Like if you are doing so many back extensions that it's ruining your lifts 2 or 3 days down the line, you're likely doing too many for how in shape you are right now. And then see if it actually has a helpful training response. So like if let's say for example, if you increase the amount of back extensions you can handle by like 30% and you've added some weight to it and you think they're going great, but it hasn't really moved your deadlift at all, I don't know how worth it they are.
Hmm.
So just very clearly try to tease out if they're helpful or not. And then we'll go to the next one. Chase, who is this guy with this belly, with this
Oh, that's
sliver
me,
of
man.
belly that's being exposed?
That's me
Yeah,
and my fat gut.
yeah. All of the accessory movement videos are of Chase and Rip. They're quite endearing. Do you want to talk about the lying tricep extensions? What is that?
Yes, I love lying tricep extensions. So basically, so it's kind of hinting in its name already, right? So you're lying down on your back and you're going from basically shoulder flexion to extension, and you are extending your triceps while loaded. So like an easy curl bar, the bar looks kind of like a zigzag. Those are great for it. Another name for them are like skull crushers, but the way that we teach it is a little bit more longer range of motion, and these really develop some pressing strength if you do these heavy. Usually, what I've done in the past, I've started out kind of a lot of volume with these. Um, Around 3 sets of 12 to 10. And then as they get heavier, I dwindle it down to where maybe a 3x5. It just kind of depends with these.
And this is with like 300 pounds, right?
My best is 170 ish, somewhere
Kilos.
around there. Yeah. No, not kilos. I wish.
Okay, yeah. So 170, and then for reference, like Chase is a very strong man. So like if you decide to do these and then you just like load up 100, you probably can't do 100.
No.
You probably can't do 100. Yeah, so the triceps have a function where they're also basically returning the arm down. Like you can feel your triceps working in your chin up a lot of times. Sometimes people will report that too. So if my arm's up here and I'm kind of pulling my arm down in a straight fashion, my triceps are doing some things there. So we are basically utilizing all of the functions of the triceps to make this happen. So we are getting both that shoulder extension in addition to the elbow extension.
Mhm.
The goal here is to get the shoulder and the chest really, really open, nice and high, and then also get the elbows to be as closed as they possibly can be, and then you are just whipping that thing back up. If you can really only feel your lats or your pecs or something, slow the movement down so you can make sure your triceps are doing some work, or add some weight so that they really have to. But for the rep, we basically want to sink into this big stretched position. So like Chase is in this big stretch right now, and then we want our arms to be an extension with the bar basically over our shoulder or clavicle at the top. The difference between this and a skull crusher is that a skull crusher is generally brought down over your skull. The first time I ever did skull crushers, I straight up bonked myself right on the nose. Yeah, I was 18. I was like, oh, skull, I have to do these for triceps. I took like 40 pounds and just railed myself right in the face.
Jesus, like almost
Um,
skinned your top of your head.
no, I skinned my nose. It's
Oh,
the good thing is that I was blessed with this large beak to protect my skull from any sort of abuse. So
good,
the
good.
nose gets hit first. Like no matter what happens, the nose gets hit. Um, but yeah, so basically with the skull crusher, it is almost entirely your elbows bending. There's really no movement around the shoulder, and then you're dropping it down right over your mouth, your nose, your eyes, something like that. They're really hard to control for most people, especially if you're like brand new to lifting. We really wouldn't recommend them. And then the range of motion can be quite short. You know, so kind of depending on who you are, what your flexibility is around the elbow, stuff like that. It may not be that large of a range of motion, which is why we like the LTE. And then you said that you really ramp the weight up on these to get
Mhm.
heavy. So let's go to the next one, which is frequency. How often were you doing these when you like to do these? Once a
Um,
week, 10
I
times a
think
week,
no, I think I was doing it about twice or
twice a
at
week?
least once. Yeah.
Yeah, put them at the tail end of your pushing sessions if they're spaced apart, well
Mhm.
enough. Um, Basically, you like we say with the rest of programming, you want to add that change to be relatively small and then increase that amount of change over time
Mhm.
as it's needed. And in terms of response, was this movement helpful for you to increase your bench, your press, all that stuff?
I think it was, but there's also other assistance exercises that kind of helped me more.
Hmm.
Like I was pin pressing at the time, and definitely that helped way more than an LTE because I can load it more. But I still felt like they did me some justice a little bit. Definitely just
They did you good.
kind of just the grinding out, right? So like I
Yeah.
with an LTE or a skull crusher, as you kind of get into either a heavier set or just like this is your 12th rep or your 20th rep, this kind of teaches you how to grind. And that's what I kind of love about these types of existence exercises where they're real light and it's just pumping volume into it. It teaches you how to grind a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what Chase said there. It's a kind of a human thing about
Mhm.
coaching. If you're like entirely from an exercise science based perspective, you won't really pick up these things because you're like, oh, this is just what optimal is. They should only do optimal. That's
Yeah.
it. There's a lot of stuff where it's like, hey, I'll add if I know someone is mentally very flip floppy, I'll add in one set of 20 for squats at the end of the week to be like, hey, you're gonna get learned today. You know what I mean? You're going to understand what it is to do a hard set, and then I'll give you that perspective for the rest of it. Like Chase was saying, even though Chase was already pressing more than 315 at this time, like a set of 20 LTEs is still really difficult,
Hmm.
and then using that difficulty as a perspective tool is huge. In terms of response, I would say if you don't have any sort of dedicated tricep work, and let's say you're getting sore in your chest and your delts and you're noticing a lot of growth there, but you're not noticing a lot of growth in your triceps, and you're not really sore in your triceps ever, it's probably an indicator that you can handle some more tricep work. So like adding something in like an LTE is probably a great movement. How often would you do this as opposed to a dip, Chase?
Um, Again, this kind of develop or kind of is rotated around who you're dealing with. Like if I have an older guy, he can probably handle an LTE, but a dip, not so much.
Hmm.
If you're young, you can basically do anything when you're young. But I probably want the LTE more, just because my shoulders are going to stay a little bit more healthier with an LTE versus a dip. Because again, if you change your gaze in a dip, it fucks up the movement. So if I look up or if I jack my head up, pushes my body weight forward. Um, you are basically handling your balance on a dip. Your shoulders are, whereas on an LTE or a skull crusher, the bench is. So there's not that many moving parts.
hmm That's a really salient point about the dip. It is surprisingly complicated from an analysis perspective.
Mhm.
It can theoretically just be elbow extension. There could be like some motions of pushing with your shoulder. You can do them in a lot of different ways. Like whenever I was caring about the wrong movements, like at the end of college, like I could dip 135 pounds for like 3 reps. I weighed about like 165, 170 at the time. I was like, oh man, I'm the strongest at pushing things in the whole world. I can dip 135. My bench was absolute trash. Not only because the fatigue cost of all the dips was super high, but because they're fundamentally very different movements. Like it's one of those things where if you are looking for a response, you really, really need to chart it out. You
Mhm.
need to be aware. So it's just like, let's say, just kind of like we did with the lower back extension, if you take a block of dips where you can only do like, 4 of them, and then you get to the point where you can do them for 12, and then let's say after that, you start adding some weight. Now you're up to set a 25-pound dips for 10 reps. That's great progress. Has it actually moved your bench any noticeable amount? Are you structuring your programming in a way where you would even notice? Like with assistance exercises, like tracking the response is kind of it's somewhat complicated. And then we'll wrap up with the assistance versus accessory. Then we'll finish off with a question from Tejo. So in that article that we had, let's find it again. Lifts versus assistance exercises. Training is not about today. And also in the book, Starting Strength, if you haven't heard of it, they go over what the definition is between an assistance movement and an ancillary movement. And then we'll talk about it here as well. So an assistance is technically what we consider a variation of the parent movement. So like Pete was saying here, like the deadlift, for example, a stiff-legged deadlift or an RDL, that would be a variation of the parent. So like if we have a close grip bench press, like a box squat or an RDL. Anything else you're thinking of, Chase, for parent or for assistance movements coming off the top of your head?
Any pin work, pin
Pin
press,
work,
pin bench, rack pull, jerking from a block,
halting.
uh, anything, right? So basically, with an assistance, you're manipulating range of motion, um, the intensity, how much weight's on the bar.
Hmm
Um, what else? That's
Yeah,
and then
that's
a little bit,
basically.
maybe some muscle mass and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
it's mainly
we
just
could also say that assistance for low bar could be a high bar squat or a front squat.
yeah,
Frankly, variations of
yeah.
the same lift. Like a wide grip bench press, a wide stance squat, a narrow stance squat. Like there's infinite. I don't want to say infinite. It's not like the as many grains of sand type deal. But there's a whole lot. And then what we define as an accessory or ancillary, as I believe he puts in the book, it works relevant areas unlike the parent, but is still useful. So like the chin up, for example, like it is pulling with my arms. I'm not doing that with the barbell really in any other ways unless I'm doing rows. It strengthens my whole back, the LTE, like we just talked about, the back extension, the dip, all that stuff. Anything else outside of this big four that we talked about that you like in the accessory or ancillary world?
Curls. I mean, you forgot the curls, man.
I can't believe I forgot the
I
curls. I
mean, dude,
literally just did
come on.
curls yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. Fuck. um, but yeah. So the barbell curl, for example, hugely important to the biceps.
Yeah.
But anything else? So we have chin up, LTE, curl, back extension, dip. Anything else big you like?
I mean, hell, man, there's a list of shit. Like, I think Arnold wrote a book about fucking 500 of these.
The
I mean,
encyclopedia of bodybuilding.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a shit ton of stuff, and you can go to any bodybuilding forum. They have a
hmm
ton of them, like French presses, tricep pull downs on the cables. There's a shit ton of stuff.
Yeah.
But the big thing is just kind of the accessory. I think of it as like kind of the cherry on top of the sundae. You have all the meat and potatoes done with all the barbell stuff. Now, you want to look good for Friday night for the clubs. Hit some curls, hit some
hmm
LTEs. Just kind of shaping how you want to look a little bit better with the accessories. But always make sure that you do all the barbell based lifts first.
Yeah, like if we have like the food pyramid of lifts, then we have the parent lifts at the bottom, we have
Mhm.
assistance lifts on top, and then all of your accessory work is what you finish. You can kind of hierarchy of needs, whatever you want to phrase it as. So like will you build a really solid physique just doing accessory work? It will take you a hell of a long time, and maybe not. Probably not though. Same thing with just assistance work. You would basically just turn one of those into a parent lift if you get proficient enough at it. But we picked the parent lifts just because they're quite nice and pretty convenient.
Mhm.
And then Tejo, Any accessory suggestions for the pecs? If your pecs aren't reliably growing from the bench, it could just be the way that you're gripping. You could be gripping a little bit too narrow, and you could be touching too low. Like the pecs may not actually be moving very much in your bench press. Try a wider gripped paused bench press. See if that works for you. Use that as a variation. And then all the bodybuilding stuff, man. If you just like you're trying to find something where you can actually feel your pecs working, if you can't feel them, if you're getting no response from the bench press whatsoever. If you're only benching like 185 and you're like, oh, why don't I have giant pecs? What do you expect?
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on this one, Chase?
Yeah, we even forgot to add flies into this.
Yeah, I've never been able to get a good mind muscle from flies. I don't know many people who
Really?
can. Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you like the fly? Can you get a good read on your pecs with the fly?
Oh hell yeah! It's because
There
I
it is.
hardly ever train chest because I don't train ever. So yeah, I can
Uh,
kind of feel it.
yeah. So like mind muscle connection is important on like hypertrophy specific accessory work. Like it doesn't matter if you take your squat from 135 to 405, your legs are going to grow. It's great. But if your bench is like stalled, for example, your triceps are growing, your front delts are growing, you just can't figure out how to use your pecs. Take some time to figure it out. Steve, he said, can you talk about the difference between the barbell curl and the dumbbell curl? So the barbell curl, Rip has a good video on it. It's highly supinated. Slow your eccentric down, slow the tempo down. You should be feeling your biceps the whole time. I would say a detractor for the barbell curl is that a lot of people just feel like their forearms are going to explode and they never really feel that much work in their biceps. Chase, what do you think about it?
Yeah, um, I tend to feel it a little bit more in my forearms a little bit more. It's due to me just actively trying to curl it up with my forearms instead of actually thinking about the movement and getting my
Mm-hmm.
elbows through. Um, that's kind of the difference there. But I like them more than a dumbbell curl because I don't want 50,000 dumbbells to then cycle through, right? I rather
Yeah.
just have one barbell where I can just slap, weights on it and just, pyramid if I need a pyramid on that.
Mm-hmm. I would say that I think on all curls, people don't really go high enough. Similar to like the tricep, how the function is to kind of pull the arm down in this
Hmm.
fashion. The bicep also brings the arm up a little bit. So like the smart bodybuilders, and I believe Rip was also saying this is, it's funny that those things line up sometimes. But you need to finish the curl like the nose or the eyebrow.
Yep.
Basically, I'm not just finishing it like here. I'm also bringing my arm up at the same time. So, the barbell curl, longer range of motion, really slow the tempo down. Dumbbell curls, you have hammer curls or normal curls, but it's just like you just got to do a lot of workshopping to see what you can actually feel your bicep best with, I think. But
Hmm.
all of it stems from having an active eccentric portion. If you were just like swinging the weight up and then basically letting it just fall down without any resistance, it's going to be a fatiguing movement for no real reason. But like Chase was saying, like the dumbbell curls, they just take up a lot of space. Like
Hmm.
if you're at a Globo gym and you have a bunch of dumbbells, I guess have fun with them.
Yeah.
And then we have one last question from Pete. Pete, have you guys ever used the STAR protocol on a pulled hammy? Okay to use SLDLs or RDL at the appropriate weight for more hamstring engagement for STAR rehab. What do you think, Chase?
Yes. I've done it personally with myself and clients. I prefer more of the RDL. I like more of the eccentric on it to kind of get a little bit more blood flow. Not so much on the stiff legs. I haven't really played around with them that much. But kind of go back and with the assistance exercises due to like a particular range of motions that we're cutting off or just a lower intensity, those are perfect for getting someone back into whatever they need to be doing with rehab. When the majority of time, um, especially on a pulled hammy, like their range of motion is going to be shot anyways. So
Mm-hmm.
if they can't lean over all the way, I'm going to make them RDL to a certain point, or even do some rack pulls.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like Chase has some very good points there about range of motion. Like a true stiff-legged deadlift is like a tremendously long range of motion.
Hmm.
It just really is. So like if the person still has like a hamstring strain, but they can do a full range of motion deadlift, that's quite impressive. Full range of motion
Hmm.
SLDL. So like the RDL, you can regulate that weight, but you're also relying on that person to turn the weight around with that hamstring. So they're keeping their
Hmm.
lower back in extension, and that weight is hitting the bottom, and they're contracting their hamstrings to bring their body back up. That's just really hard on the hamstrings. So like you have to go super light on those ones. If they actually have a pulled hamstring, there's like some bleeding that's showing up under the skin, something like that. It's not just a hamstring tweak, not just pain. Um, But honestly, I've done a lot of like stiff-legged deadlift style out of a rack. So it's like it's not really off the floor, but I'm setting up like a stiff-legged deadlift. That way I'm getting my hamstrings really tight, then I'm pulling and lowering it down as much as I can. But yeah, it's basically it's not too different than the normal deadlift, I don't think. But the point of the STAR protocol is just to get in a bunch of work. It won't feel super pleasant, but you'll be able to work through it over time.
Hmm.
Anything else, Chase? Anything else you want to dip into?
I think that's about it.
Okay.
I think yeah, we kind of just touched on a bunch of like the really fancy and the ones that people really are
The
accustomed
popular
to
ones.
seeing. Yeah, exactly. So, um, you brought up a good point with just see what works for you. This is going to be highly individualized with programming and just exercise selection in these aspects. Yeah, just mess around with them.
Yeah, so like literally, if someone ever says, "Hey, play around with it, see what feels best," like we're not a coach isn't just trying to like get you to not do any work or have them not do work. Um, Melchior Caspar has another question. I'll answer that question in a second, but yeah, so like with accessory work, it's super individual. You do have to play around with it a lot. It's fun. It's a way for you to enjoy training that's not carrying a million pounds on your back. Um, but we'll get to this question. Um, Melchior Caspar, Alex, how do you approach bicep training that is increasing 1RM strength in the barbell curl? 1RM strength in the barbell curl is useless. It is not a strength movement in that such whatsoever. What you're looking for is to increase volume over time. I would say establish so that you can have a working volume tolerance. So, like if you do 3 sets a week, or let's say 3 sets a week, and you're screwed up for like 5 days, it's not great. You're probably not going to be able to get in enough bicep training to really stimulate a lot of growth. So try and get that into an area where you're feeling like you're doing a lot of work. You can make progress, but you're not digging a huge recovery hole. I would think for most people that's probably somewhere between like 7 to 14 sets, 14 sets on the really high end. And then just make sure you're actually feeling your biceps and you're increasing the reps you can do with a given weight over time. So like if you can do right now, let's say like a 20-pound dumbbells for a set of 8, get that to like 14, but make sure you're being really honest about the rep counts, so you're not swinging it for the last 6 reps. You're being really strict and honest about it. And then keep that trend going over time, I would say. But Chase, tell us about your Instagram. Has there been anything cool going on there recently?
Oh man, I need to do a better job of posting stuff. I just like with the we were talking before the podcast started with the Olympic stuff. It's not how I normally respond with like say like on a squat, you can literally see everything going up. You have some good days where like even if you come in there already shit, feeling like shit, you can hit the weight.
Mm-hmm.
With the more Olympic style training, it's just like, man, I feel good, but everything looks like shit. Or just
Yeah.
I feel bad and everything's like shit. So
Feel
I'm
good.
kind of working on some
Yeah.
stuff, right? And it's just me being me and just I need to post my trials and tribulations and actually
It's a quest.
show.
It is a
Yeah,
long
it is.
quest.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
hmm Yeah, guys, AB said thanks for doing these. Very informative. I'm glad. If you guys are still watching, make sure that you're subscribing, and you're also sending in some videos. A lot of the videos that we've been getting have been like not super great angles, not super informative for like a teaching process like we like to do here. So send in some videos, and then thank you all very much for watching. That's about it. You can find Chase's Instagram, me, my website. Send videos to that support at strength.club, and we're heading out.
See you guys.